I guess y'all drew the short straw this week, right? Y'all made me nervous when everybody showed up. But anyway, a few years ago, we went to lunch with a couple of priests that's friends. And yes, you can be friends with priests, right? I didn't know that when I was young. And now I have many priests that are friends. The sad part is they have my phone number. But anyway, we went to lunch, and one of them had just come back from a trip to the Holy Land. And he had a bunch of pictures that he had taken, and he was showing them to us, and we're looking at them, and it's awesome. I mean, we've all seen the pictures of the Holy Land. Some of you have been there. And I made the comment, and I said, if I ever make a bucket list, going to the Holy Land would probably be on it. And the priest that was sitting directly across from me looked at me and he says, "They won't let you in." And I said, "What?" He said, "What do you mean they won't let me?" He said, "No." He said, "They won't let you in." And I said, "I don't understand. Why wouldn't they let me in?" He said, "You look too much like Moses." But for you guys that have gray beards, right, there is hope for us to be able to get into the Holy Land. So you see, in today's gospel, it talks about the transfiguration, right? That time that Jesus was completely transfigured in front of the apostles, because God is preparing him for what's coming, right? It says that Moses and Elijah talked to him about his exodus into Jerusalem. We don't think about it that way, right? But he was going to enter into Jerusalem to be crucified. He knew where he was going. I think Jesus fully knew where his life was going to be. And he fully accepted the challenge before him. You see, and so Jesus is talking to Moses and Elijah, right? And here they are, and the apostles, and Peter has a bad habit of that, what they call it, that foot and mouth disease. He's always saying the wrong thing at the right time. So Peter says, "Hey, how about if we build a tent for all three of you?" Not realizing what's going on. Not realizing who he's speaking to. Who's there speaking with Jesus, right? He knew it was Moses and Elijah. But the whole thing had to be overwhelming. And you see, so here he is, and he says all of these things, and he tells him, he says, let's build these tents, and all of a sudden this cloud comes, and we hear this again, because when's the last time we heard the voice of God tell us about Jesus? At his baptism. When the dove descended, and they heard the voice saying, "This is my beloved Son, listen to him." We hear this command again today from God, right? "This is my beloved Son. Listen to him." When at the wedding at Cana, Mary said, what did Mary tell the servants? "Do whatever he tells you." Problem is sometimes we don't listen. Sometimes we're hard of hearing. Sometimes we let the world get in our view, and we don't see what we're supposed to see. We don't hear what we're supposed to hear. And a phrase that I always like is that life gets in the way of living. You see, and when they saw this transfiguration, they saw Jesus, in all of his glory. These apostles had to know who Jesus is. I never use past tense. Who Jesus is. Now, for those guys that look like me, that kind of favor in Moses, in the image of Moses, right? Okay, where were they? They were on Mount Tabor, which is in the Holy Land. And guess who was there? Moses. So he did get into the Holy Land eventually. Remember the story, right? Moses led the Israelites through the desert, and when he came to the river, God prevented him from crossing the river. And it was because of a mistake he made 40 years ago that God didn't let him enter. But here he is in the Holy Land speaking to Jesus about the time to come. So there is hope for us that look like Moses. So we can put that on our bucket list if it comes up, right? So anyhow, but we have to be able to, as Catholic Christians, we have to be able to listen to the voice of God. We have to listen to what He's telling us, to have to follow the directions of Jesus Christ. And Jesus was transfigured before the eyes of His apostles. And we can be transfigured before the eyes of Jesus. You see, Jesus wants us to be like Him. He wants us to have the same glory. We are, as our baptism, we can inherit the kingdom of God. At our baptism, we become children of God, brothers and sisters to Jesus Christ. And He wants us to be glorified like He is. So how do we do that? We listen to the voice of God. We know that Jesus Christ is His beloved Son, and we learn to listen to Him. And how do we do that? Sometimes we just have to be silent. Sometimes we have to shut up and listen, because all too often in our prayers we're praying for this and praying for that, or hey, look, God, I could use your help, I could use this, but we never stop and listen to what He's telling us. We never stop and listen for His instruction. And I don't know about y'all, but I am guilty of that for sure. Some people say I talk a lot. I don't believe that. Some people say I do. But it's part of my job too. But we have to be able to listen to the voice of God. We have to listen to the instructions of Jesus Christ. And we can be transfigured just as He is. He can change our lives to be like His. You see, He tells us that we have to be holy just as His Father in heaven is holy. How many people think that's impossible? Because none of us are perfect. But it has to be what we strive for. It has to be the challenge that's placed before us, to always strive to be perfect. We're going to fail, but we can't let failure prevent us from being there. We can't let failure prevent us from trying and continue to try. We have to persevere to the end. Paul tells us that those who persevere to the end will be successful. St. John Paul II told us to never, 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 never give up. Another lifetime ago, when I worked in the oil field, I was ordained a deacon, but I was still in the oil field, and I used to get questions every so often from people. One of the first questions I'd get around Ash Wednesday, the beginning of Lent, was, when does Lent actually finish? Because I gave up drinking for Lent, so I want to know when I can start again. So I said, really? Did you really give it up? Right? You got to make it a challenge. But one day a guy walked up to me and he said, you Catholics, he said, y'all pray to all these dead saints. He said, where in the Bible does it say that you can pray to all these dead saints? And I looked at him and I just said, well, first question, what happens when you die? And he said, what do you mean? I said, well, you're supposed to be a person of faith, right? You believe that there is a heaven and there is a hell, and you believe all of this stuff, but what happens to you when you die? Do you forget about all of your friends and relatives? If you make it to heaven, do you forget about all your friends and relatives? Do you no longer care for the people you left behind? And he said, well, no. I said, okay. So why do you say that the saints are dead? You see, we believe that the saints are alive, more alive than we are here today, because they are in heaven and glorifying God. You know, when they pray, it's a local call. They're not long distance like we are. And he says, well, but y'all still pray to all these dead saints. I said, no. But if you want to know where it's at in the Bible, today's gospel tells us that we can have a conversation with those who have gone before us. So who was Jesus speaking to? Moses and Elijah. Those two had gone to heaven long before Jesus came to earth. So here he was having a conversation with these dead saints. So we can too. See, we can pray for their intercession. We can pray asking them to intercede for us. Because like I said, it's a local call for them. It's not long distance like it is for us. So what do we have to do? During this Lent, what do we have to do the most to help us to achieve our goal of being present for the resurrection of Jesus? We listen to God's instructions. He said, "This is my beloved Son. Listen to him." Can we listen? Can we stop long enough with the headaches and the heartaches and all of the confusion and the bustling and everything that's going on in the world? Stop long enough to listen so that he can show us the way.